Imagine a swarm of drones the size of your palm, each one carrying enough explosive to eliminate a human target. They don't need remote pilots. They don't need orders. Once released, they hunt their targets using facial recognition and make kill decisions completely on their own. This isn't science fiction. This isn't from a movie. This technology exists today. What happens when a weapon can choose who lives and who dies? What happens when the decision to take a human life is handed over to an algorithm? And most importantly, why is the United Nations fighting so hard to ban these weapons before they transform warfare forever? Today, we're diving into the shadowy world of lethal autonomous weapons, what experts have dubbed Slaughterbots, and revealing why military leaders, scientists, and global organizations are raising the alarm about what might be the most dangerous technological advancement in modern warfare. The history of warfare has always been defined by technological leaps. From the invention of gunpowder to nuclear weapons, each advancement has forced nations to reconsider the rules of engagement. But autonomous weapons represent something fundamentally different. For the first time in human history, we are creating weapons that can make the decision to kill without human input. Traditional drones, like the ones our skilled military forces have used for reconnaissance and precision strikes, always have a human in the loop, a trained operator who makes the final decision about whether to engage a target. These systems have allowed our forces to conduct operations with reduced risk to our servicemen and women, while maintaining the critical element of human judgment. What makes Slaughterbots different is the removal of that human element. These are weapon systems that can select and engage targets on their own, using sensors, cameras, and artificial intelligence to identify who to attack based on pre-programmed criteria. The technology behind them combines advances in several fields: miniaturized drones that can navigate indoor and outdoor environments, facial recognition software that can identify specific individuals, artificial intelligence that can make targeting decisions, explosive payloads small enough to be carried by tiny drones but lethal enough to kill. The technological reality in 2017, a video called Slaughterbots, was released by the Future of Life Institute, showing a fictional scenario where small autonomous drones target and kill specific people. At the time, many dismissed it as alarmist. But according to a report from the United Nations Institute for Disarmament Research, the technology to create such weapons already exists. The U.S. Army's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, has been developing drone swarm technology under programs like Offset, Offensive Swarm-Enabled Tactics, which allows a single operator to control hundreds of small drones simultaneously. While these programs are focused on surveillance and non-lethal applications, the underlying technology could be adapted for lethal purposes. In 2020, reports emerged suggesting autonomous drones may have been used in combat zones for the first time. According to a UN report, in Libya's civil conflict, Turkish-made Kargu-2 drones were programmed to attack targets without requiring data connectivity between the operator and the weapon. While Turkey maintains that human operators make final targeting decisions, the incident raised serious concerns about how close we've come to fully autonomous weapons deployment. China's military has showcased swarms of hundreds of drones operating in precise formations, while Israel's Harpy and Harop, loitering munitions, can patrol an area and strike radar systems without direct human control. Russia has publicly stated its commitment to developing military artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. What makes these developments particularly concerning is how accessible the technology has become. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require rare materials and sophisticated knowledge to develop, the components for autonomous weapons can be purchased commercially. A skilled engineer with access to off-the-shelf parts could potentially build a crude version for less than $1,000. The military perspective. Our military leaders have voiced both the potential benefits and serious concerns about autonomous weapon systems. General John Raymond, former Chief of Space Operations for the U.S. Space Force, has noted that autonomous systems could potentially reduce risk to warfighters and allow for operations in communications-denied environments. Automation gives us capabilities in places where we might lose traditional communications, he explained at a defense conference in 2023. but we need thoughtful policies around these technologies. Many military experts point out that despite the risks, democratic nations like the United States need to continue research into these technologies to ensure that our forces maintain technological superiority. After all, the best defense against potential adversaries with autonomous weapons might be having effective countermeasures. Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, has written extensively on the subject, arguing that the US and its allies must approach autonomous weapons with caution, but cannot afford to halt development while potential adversaries forge ahead. The Department of Defense Directive 3000.09, which establishes guidelines for autonomous weapons, requires appropriate levels of human judgment in the use of force, a principle our military takes very seriously. The ethical dilemma. The core ethical question with autonomous weapons is whether machines should be allowed to make life-or-death decisions. For many ethicists and military thinkers, this crosses a fundamental moral line. Lieutenant General Robert Ashley, former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, put it clearly: the decision to take a human life should always include human judgment. Delegating that authority entirely to an algorithm is deeply concerning. The concerns fall into several categories. First, there's the issue of distinction, the ability to differentiate between combatants and civilians. While AI has made remarkable progress, it still makes mistakes in complex environments. In combat zones where fighters don't wear uniforms and operate among civilian populations, these mistakes could be deadly. Second, there's the problem of responsibility. If an autonomous weapon makes a mistake, who is accountable? The programmer? The manufacturer? The military commander who deployed it? This responsibility gap makes it difficult to ensure justice when things go wrong. Third, there's the risk of unintended escalation. Autonomous systems operate at machine speed, potentially making decisions faster than humans can respond. If two opposing autonomous systems were to interact, they could rapidly escalate a situation beyond what either side intended. Finally, there's what experts call the lowered threshold for conflict. When nations can wage war without risking their personnel, the political barriers to starting conflicts may be reduced. The UN's response. Since 2014, the United Nations has been hosting discussions on lethal autonomous weapon systems, laws, through the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, CCW, in Geneva. These discussions have brought together military experts, scientists, ethicists, and diplomats to address the challenges posed by these emerging technologies. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has been increasingly vocal, calling autonomous weapons morally repugnant and politically unacceptable. In 2018, he stated that machines with the power and discretion to take human lives without human involvement are politically unacceptable, morally repugnant, and should be prohibited by international law. The International Committee of the Red Cross, which monitors compliance with the Geneva Conventions, has called for new legally binding rules on autonomous weapons to ensure that meaningful human control is maintained in warfare. More than 30 countries have explicitly called for a ban on fully autonomous weapons, including Austria, Brazil, and New Zealand. The European Parliament has also passed a resolution supporting a ban on the development, production, and use of fully autonomous weapons, which enable strikes to be carried out without meaningful human intervention. However, progress has been slow. Nations like the United States, Russia, and Israel have resisted a complete ban, arguing instead for regulations that allow for the development of autonomous systems while preventing their misuse. If you appreciate our in-depth analysis of critical defense technologies like these, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Your contributions help us produce more high-quality content on important security issues that affect us all. The link to our Patreon page is in the description below. With your support, we can continue to bring you the facts about emerging threats and technologies. The proliferation risk. One of the most alarming aspects of autonomous weapons is how easily they could proliferate. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require rare materials and sophisticated facilities to produce, autonomous weapons can be built with commercially available components. This accessibility creates what security experts call a democratization of violence. where destructive capability that was once limited to nation-states becomes available to non-state actors, including terrorist groups. In 2018, a commercially available drone was used in an assassination attempt against Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. While that drone was remotely piloted, it demonstrated how easily aerial weapons can be deployed even by groups with limited resources. Paul Shara, former Pentagon official and author of Army of None: Autonomous Weapons and the Future of War, has warned, the components to build autonomous weapons, small drones, cameras, facial recognition software, are all available on the commercial market. The barrier to entry is much lower than for other advanced weapons. This proliferation risk is one reason why many military leaders support international regulations. As General Joseph Dunford, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, noted, we need international norms around these technologies because they will not remain exclusively in the hands of responsible nations. Technological safeguards. Despite the risks, many experts in both the military and tech sectors believe that technological safeguards could make autonomous weapons safer. These include meaningful human control, designing systems where humans make the final decision to use lethal force, while allowing autonomy in other functions like navigation and tracking. Geographic restrictions, programming weapons with geofencing that prevents them from operating in certain areas, such as civilian-dense locations. Time limitations, creating systems that can only operate for a limited period before requiring human reauthorization. Ethical governors, building AI systems with constraints that align with the laws of armed conflict, preventing actions that would violate international humanitarian law. General Paul Nakasone, former commander of U.S. Cyber Command, emphasized that as we develop these technologies, building in appropriate safeguards isn't just the right thing to do, it's essential for maintaining military discipline and adhering to our values. Current state of affairs. As of 2024, no nation has admitted to deploying fully autonomous weapon systems, though many are developing technologies that approach that capability. The United States maintains its policy requiring appropriate levels of human judgment in lethal targeting decisions, while continuing to invest in autonomous capabilities for intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. China has announced massive investments in artificial intelligence for military applications, while Russia's military doctrine explicitly embraces automation as a key component of future warfare. Meanwhile, the United Nations continues to host discussions through the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, seeking consensus on appropriate limitations. Progress has been made in defining key concepts, but nations remain divided on whether to pursue a legally binding ban or a less restrictive code of conduct. Organizations like the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, which includes over 180 non-governmental organizations in 65 countries, continue to advocate for a complete ban on fully autonomous weapons. In the technology sector, thousands of AI researchers and robotics experts have signed open letters pledging not to develop autonomous weapons, including leaders from companies like DeepMind and Boston Dynamics. The future battlefield. If we fail to establish effective international controls, military analysts paint a concerning picture of future conflicts involving autonomous weapons. Imagine swarms of thousands of drones, each the size of a sparrow, flooding into an urban area. Using facial recognition and behavioral analysis, they identify and eliminate specific individuals or anyone carrying a weapon. They can enter buildings, navigate through rooms, and operate for hours on end. Counter-swarm defenses would likely emerge, electronic warfare systems to jam their communications, defensive drone swarms to intercept attackers, and physical barriers to protect critical infrastructure. Traditional military units would need to adapt, operating under strict emissions control to avoid detection and developing new tactics to counter autonomous threats. Admiral James Stavridis describes it as a fundamental shift in the character of war, comparing it to the introduction of gunpowder or nuclear weapons. These technologies won't just change how we fight, they'll change whether, when, and why nations choose to fight. Concluding thoughts. The debate over Slaughterbots ultimately comes down to a fundamental question: Are there aspects of warfare that should remain uniquely human? Our military personnel operate under a code of honor that includes moral judgment, compassion, and the ability to show mercy. They take risks not just to accomplish missions, but to minimize civilian casualties and adhere to the laws of war. This human element, what military philosophers call the warrior ethos, cannot be programmed into a machine. As General Mark Milley, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, stated, "There's something inherently human about the profession of arms. War is a human endeavor. It's not a machine endeavor." The challenge for our world is to harness the benefits of autonomy and artificial intelligence while preserving these essential human qualities in decisions about life and death. The United Nations' efforts to establish international norms before these weapons transform warfare represents one of the most important preventive arms control initiatives in recent history. Whether it succeeds may determine not just how wars are fought in the future, but what it means to be human in an age of increasingly intelligent machines. If you found this analysis valuable, we'd appreciate your support. If you agree that more people should understand the implications of autonomous weapons, type "informed" in the comments below. Your engagement helps our content reach more viewers who care about these critical issues. And if you're interested in more in-depth analysis of emerging defense technologies and global security challenges, please consider subscribing to our channel and clicking the notification bell so you don't miss our future documentaries. Thank you for watching, and remember, understanding the challenges of tomorrow begins with being informed today.